Are you Invictus? Clint, are you Invictus? Are you Invictus?
What does it mean?
You know, when I started the Invictus Mind podcast, my goal was to unite a bunch of people who had a similar ideology or similar characteristic traits. Invictus means unconquerable. So it's an old Greek word for means unconquerable.
Unconquerable.
Honestly, just be totally honest, it was a new concept to me. I had to Google it when you sent it to me. But yeah, I do my best.
Tell me about what the show. What is your audience looking for? Tell me.
This is your first time here. This is the #1 program dedicated to helping individuals maximize their potential and truly become unconquerable. Here we have discussions about what it takes and what it means to experience and magnify political freedom, financial freedom, and spiritual freedom.
Yes, I would absolutely say that. I'm going to keep getting up, right? And I keep getting up and I keep pushing forward. And that's the type of mindset that you need to have.
I never lose hope. I never lose faith. My mindset has always been, if I want something, I don't give up. So let me tell you what is the #1 issue when it comes to being unconquerable.
Okay.
And the #1 word you have to think about here is not intelligence, not savvy, not strength, none of those things. The #1 thing is resilience.
You know I'm Invictus, come on. All right, I'm Invictus AF.
Well, may I have an initiation question for my tribe?
Okay.
Are you Invictus?
I believe I am.
So yes, I agree. I am Invictus.
I totally agree, man. And I think that if there's anybody on this planet that's unconquerable, it's probably me. I am not the type to take orders, and I am definitely in a position that I can stand up for myself right now. So.
And I was like, no way, I know what that word means now.
Yeah, man, very cool concept for a show.
You didn't ask me if I was Invictus.
All right, well, hello, everyone. I'm sitting here with my new graphic designer named Ryan Bunting, and we're going to play a little game called Get to Know Your Graphic Designer. Since I was introduced to him through another podcast by the name of Tommy Selmans, host of the Year Zero podcast, and he also, my understanding is you did the artwork for Pete Quinones as well, Ryan, correct?
That is correct.
So I figured I'd look you up to give you a shot, and I do want to thank you for creating a wonderful new logo for my podcast. So
you're very welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Other than that, I only know you as a liberty activist and an entrepreneur, and I figure we just just have a conversation here, just to kind of chat. Doesn't have to be formal or anything like that. So what's going on?
Not too much. I'm just kind of focusing on graphic work as of lately. I start a new job next week on Wednesday. Just recently started a business with the wife. I've a lot of good things going on after a very strange month and a half or so.
Strange month and a half for you, perhaps. It's been a strange 18 months, I think, for the whole world, all right?
Oh, no, absolutely. I was speaking more specifically about my previous job, but yeah, time has just been an ephemeral blur since about March of 2020.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think that you have the right idea starting your own business. Why don't you start and tell me a little bit about that? Obviously, I mentioned that you did some graphic artwork for some people, and what type of business are you starting?
Yeah, so we started a virtual assistant business. So basically, we offer remote services ranging from graphic design to social media management, data entry, bookkeeping, invoicing, basically anything that involves a computer and an internet connection. We can do that remotely and far cheaper than hiring someone full-time to do it, because the benefit of hiring a virtual assistant is that you don't have to pay their taxes, you don't have to offer them insurance, because they're an independent contractor.
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that I like to talk about on my podcast here, the Invictus Mind, is how we actually can become unconquerable. That's what the word Invictus means.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't look that up, but I'm going to start off with this premise, Ryan, that in today's strange world, post-COVID-19, I think it's important for us to really understand what true liberty is. And being an entrepreneur, I think, is one of those biggest ways to get there. What do you think?
I 100% agree. People define liberty a lot of different ways. But for me, it's absolute individual freedom. And that means the freedom to buy, sell, make, or use whatever you want, as long as you're not hurting anyone or damaging their property, etc. But another part of economic liberty is making your own way. We've all worked for somebody else. Most of us still probably do. I'm still going to, even though I'll have my own business on the side. But ultimately, the end goal is to become completely autonomous. And I think that is a huge aspect of personal freedom, especially in a post-COVID world where the job market is really strange right now. And my whole thing was that, I was talking to my wife about, what we could do to kind of escape from the 9 to 5 kind of grind. And not only just to get out of that routine, but also to kind of make our own source of income. And, we had tossed a couple ideas around. We went back and forth. But at the end of the day, we both had very particular sets of skills that all related to things that we could do online for other people or small businesses, which is our primary demographic. And I mean, in regards to anyone listening, there's something you're likely good at. And it's something that you could probably very quickly and very cheaply turn into a secondary source of income. And that was kind of where we landed. And it was like, let's just work on this until it can become a full-time gig.
Right, and that's the dream, is to be able to be completely independent. I know there are people who have jobs out there, and we learned in 2020 that there's a such thing as an essential business, right? So millions of people, including my wife, were laid off for a period of time because they didn't have the ability to control their own income, and I think that's the future. So I really like to hone in on entrepreneurism. And, the fact that you are digitally based, everything on computers, means that you now have the freedom to travel as well.
Absolutely.
You have mobile income, as they say. So I understand that you're currently living in Delaware, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if things get too heated up in Delaware, then you can just get the heck out of there, because you can take your business anywhere.
Absolutely. And it's not only a benefit for our own mobility, but it's also great because, if we have someone in Wyoming that needs our services, we don't have to fly to Wyoming. We can do it all over the internet. So it opens up our breadth of customer base, but it also grants us that freedom. So it's kind of across the board. It's freedom for small businesses to choose who they want to hire, no matter their geographical location. And it's also freedom for us. Like, as you said, if things start to go south here, we can pack up and bounce.
Exactly. And so I think that's the real dream of having freedom. I've been talking to a lot of libertarians, and I haven't been shying away from saying that I don't think that the political arena is really the place to achieve freedom these days. I think that it's more of an independent mindset now, developing your own freedom, your own source of income, being able to be mobile. But then again, providing a service to anybody from any place is really what the dream is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still kind of torn on political action myself. I am involved with my local Mises caucus. I am actually the vice chair of the Newcastle County Libertarian Party. My wife is the secretary of the Newcastle County Libertarian Party. We are trying to, we're hoping that we can enact some sort of positive change. We actually did a pretty decent job over the summer of fighting against some pretty egregious anti-gun bills. We've built some coalitions with the Delaware Medical Freedom Association, because the largest hospital network here, ChristianaCare, is firing all of their employees that do not vaccinate by September 21st. So we had a big rally. We had about 500 people show up. News came by. So I'm still not convinced that political action is going to do anything in the grand scheme of things, but I think at a local level we might be able to. But that said, I also agree with you in that ultimately the individual should be focusing on bettering their own situation and kind of their circle of people.
That's some crazy news. You think about all those healthcare workers and nurses, particularly, who worked through the so-called pandemic, scamdemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Being unvaccinated, being there on the front lines, dealing with a potential virus. But then all of a sudden, a year and a half later, now if they don't get this magic vaccine, that they're going to be fired from their job. I mean, that doesn't seem right.
They were heroes all last year. They were the biggest heroes the world has ever seen. A year and a half later, get the jab or you're fired.
And that's what government's going to do to you.
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
But I think that you're onto something there at the local level. There are some things you can do it locally. I just I met my wife in with local activism. We marched for the Libertarian Parade here in Illinois, and that's where we met. But I've distanced myself from party politics. It's just spinning my wheels, and you might get a bill passed here or there, but most of the time it's just people complaining about stuff, and nothing ever changes. And we're all celebrating because we get 1 or 2% of the votes. It's like, woohoo, yay! And they consider that a win. It's like, okay, how is that a win?
Yeah, and that's kind of like the biggest struggle that I have is that like, what kind of change are we ever really going to achieve through political means? Because the whole system is rigged against anyone that does not have an R or a D in front of their name. So it's like we can fight against this monolithic thing within its own rule set, which you're basically set up for failure. Speaking of which, I'm probably one term in party politics, and I'm probably out after this. I'm still going to stay active with the Mises Caucus people because they were some of the first people that I met when I moved here last year, and all of them have become extremely good friends of mine. They're kind of like, not only is it like they're members of this caucus, but we're also kind of a very small freedom cell, so that if, shit hits the fan, we would all be able to, take care of one another, what have you. So that is the one benefit of getting involved politically, is that I never would have met these people had I not. But yeah, after a year of trying political action, I'm not entirely sold that it's going to do anything major.
Well, Ryan, I don't want to ask you to burn any bridges or lose any friends over your opinions of party politics, because I know how sensitive people can be on this subject. However, I am interested in learning, I guess, your evolution or your adaptation into libertarian philosophy. If you wouldn't mind sharing some of that with us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So for an overwhelming majority of my life, I was that kind of politically homeless, kind of generic, the meme, like, fiscally conservative but socially liberal. I was that guy where it was like, I don't care if gay people marry, but stop taxing the shit out of everyone. That was kind of where I was at. I pretty much voted Republican for most of my life when I bothered to even vote. Mm-hmm. And then after 2016, I was like, there's got to be something more here. So it was actually, I was at a friend's barbecue for Memorial Day, and we were talking about, the Trump-Hillary election and some of the topics at hand. And at the time, like a secondary friend, this dude Matt, was there, and he was like, yeah, it sounds like you're a libertarian. And I was like, what is that? Because I had no idea what they were, and that's one of the Libertarian Party's biggest problems, is that no one knows who they are, or what they're for. They just think they're like wacky fringe semi-right people. So that was kind of my understanding. He asked me a couple questions, like 6 questions, about like abortion, drug laws, like kind of like a handful of things. And the way that I answered, and my wife then friend had answered the same way, and he was like, hey, you guys are libertarians. So I, of course, was like, well, what the hell is libertarianism? So I started diving into, all of these books and articles, and for about 6 weeks, I was a minarchist libertarian, and then after that, I was full anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist type, and I've kind of been there ever since.
That's the joke, right? What's the difference between a minarchist and an anarchist is about 2 months.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I guess I'm going to classify myself as an old man by now, because I'm going to be 44 this year, and I was introduced to libertarianism. Well, I heard the word back in 2000, so that was over 20 years ago now. But I jumped on the Ron Paul bandwagon in 2012, and I know a lot of people, maybe of your age. I'm sure you're familiar with Ron Paul, but maybe you didn't get into him when he was actually running for president.
Yeah, I completely missed Ron Paul both times. So the first time around, I was just too young to care or really appreciate what he was doing, and in 2012, I was far too busy being a 20-something doing what 20-somethings do. So I kind of I wasn't even interested in politics even remotely up until I like, again, it was like Trump and Hillary. It was like, okay, you got like Darth Vader and Satan. So I was like, okay, so this sucks. Maybe I should try and figure out what's going on. And that's when I got called out for being a libertarian and did my rabbit hole. And now I've just been on that ever since.
Okay. And obviously, being a part of the Mises Caucus, we're trying to develop some good branding and some good strategies to achieve more than maybe 1 or 2% of the vote. Or in any case, the saying goes that they want to reinvent the Ron Paul revolution, kind of get it sparked up again.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's good. That's good. Briefly, Ryan, just between you and I and all those listeners out there, Libertarian Party, I made several friends. Like I said, I met my wife in it and I learned a lot, but just living my life, just realizing the things that are important in my life, like family and job and taking care of, I have a daughter. That kind of thing, I think, escapes a lot of activists these world. They want to have a free world, but yet they don't understand what it really means to be an adult and to have a job and to have a family and all that kind of stuff. And so,
absolutely. And on top of that, being politically active is essentially like having an unpaying job. I mean, it requires so much work and effort just to do really remotely small things. And it's easy to get burnt out. It's like, I am a radical individualist. I love liberty. But Jesus Christ, some days it's like I can't be involved with this, which is why I like your concept of like focusing on becoming free yourself in whatever means you can, as opposed to trying to affect a larger scale thing, because the chances of that versus the chances of you focusing on your life, it's peanuts compared to what you are able to do with just what's in your purview. And then that way you're also not ignoring your family, your job, or your responsibilities. You can still do those things while working towards some degree of freedom.
What's interesting, it becomes like a concentric circle, right? You work on if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson, he says, clean your room, right? And so if you get your shit in order and then you help your family out, and then maybe you help your extended family out, then you can reach out to your community. And then once you become, known for helping people, maybe you provide a service to them, then it just grows from there, right? And that's real grassroots libertarianism right there. Instead of trying to jump into the political arena, you're taking care of things that you need to take care of and teaching others the same principles. If you teach others the same principles, then freedom is a result.
Absolutely.
I don't think that there's anything that you can do to jump into that. I call it the circle of elites. Unless you're wealthy and influential, you're not changing anybody's perspective. Like
George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Exactly. Well, Ryan, as I was looking over some of this stuff, I like to do a little research about people I'm talking to in the podcast here. So, I went to your Facebook page and I found out that on your website too, that you work in as a systems administrator. Is that what you do full time?
Well, I wore many hats. So I worked in the IT department, so I've worked in warehousing and logistics for about 12, 13 years now.
Okay.
I started off as a clerk, moved into the warehouse, and then I moved into IT because I've always been a computer nerd. And I would like fix printers and like network share stuff, and I would do all these things, and my managers would be like, what the fuck is this guy doing, like doing payroll for forklift operators? So I was in the IT department for about 6 years, and I not only would troubleshoot systems, install hardware, that kind of stuff. But I also handled all of the container information. So like those big container vessels coming in, I would just make sure that everything matched up with customs coming in and that everything was in the right spot going out. And I did that for a handful of container shipping lines. So that's where most of my expertise lies. But yeah, I did IT and operations. So
Now, did you go to school for that, or did you just, learn just from doing the work?
I fell right into it. Yeah, so I went to school for computer science, but I was banking with Wachovia back then, back when Wachovia existed, and when Wells Fargo bought them out in like my last year of college, and Wells Fargo was like, well, based on our loan policies, you're just not going to finish college. And I was like, okay, well, thanks. I'll go fuck myself. But despite not having a degree, I still had the skills. I've been a computer nerd since I was 5 or 6 years old. My dad worked on computers in the Army, so our first computer was DOS only, all command line. So I've been working with these things since I was 5 years old, and I've always been curious as to how things work. So like I taught myself how to build websites at 11. I started graphic design right around the same time using Adobe Photoshop 5, which for anyone familiar with the Photoshop version series was a very long time ago. So yeah, I kind of got in just by demonstrating my skill and ability with these things, and they were like, all right, cool, boom, and moved me right up.
Yeah, I think that you are demonstrating again a difference in age only because I had to learn computers later in life, kind of out of necessity rather than interest, because that's where everything is. And I think that's where the future is going. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a graphic designer or has to know how to build and code for websites, but I think that understanding digital technology, understanding Zoom technology and YouTube and all that stuff. I work with a lot of people who are, let's just call them what they are, baby boomers, right? And they're like, I don't understand this kind of stuff. I'm like, well, you better.
It's actually something that I thought about doing, was like putting together a course like computers for boomers. I would call it something less offensive to them, but essentially that, like, this is your mouse. When someone says the taskbar, this is what they mean. This is your start menu, like that kind of stuff. Because the sad thing is that there are a lot of people that are like that. They barely understand the technology they use. My wife and I call them button pushers. They push the buttons, but they don't know why they push the buttons. They don't know the relationship of one button to another. They just know which buttons to push, which order to push them in order to do their job. The second anything changes with their job, they're done for, because they don't have the basic understanding of how these things work, and they're going to be screwed.
Yeah, especially in the future of automation and technology. I think most people who work, I've heard a phrase called digital ditch digger, kind of what you're describing, right?
That's a great term.
There are people who literally have no skills out there, but they're relying on that job. And if they're in some kind of office somewhere pushing buttons, as you said, being a digital ditch digger, then what happens when that job goes away? Then they can petition the government all they want for their freedom, but they don't have any skills. How are they actually going to get that?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's a very stark reality of the current job market. I mean, 10 years ago, yeah, not everything was computerized. You still had some manual stuff. But for the most part, like everything nowadays, billing, invoicing, inventory management. I mean, no matter what kind of business you run, you likely have some sort of inventory or whatever. And you're not using a marble-bound notebook to keep track of that. You have a software solution for that.
Yeah, so I think it's important, which is why I admire some of your work, Ryan, is because you take that creative energy that you have within yourself, and you're putting that to good use, and you're actually making a supplemental income. The day may come when you go full time with that, but I really think that's the future, is not only understanding technology, but being able to use your own creativity along with technology to create a life for yourself.
Absolutely, and it's something I harp on quite a bit, because like I have a handful of friends that are like super pessimistic. You know, they're like, "Oh, I'm not good at anything, and blah, 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 I'm stuck in X, Y, or Z." And it's like, I try to tell them, it's like, dude, you're good at something. There is something that you are exceptionally good at, and like, you know, some of them are like, "Oh, well, I'm like really good at video games, but what's that going to do for me?" And I'm like, "Well, dude, look at all the people that stream on Twitch. Look at the people that stream on Twitch. If you get 500 subscribers once you get affiliate status, 500 subs times $5 every month, that's like a decent living. If you can make that happen. It's a very tough market to get into, but the bottom line is that everyone is good at something. There is something that you can be leveraging to earn yourself some sort of income, you know?
Yeah. Now I noticed that you have an alias because you're on Twitch as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking back to this past summer. I took a trip with my brother's family and my niece and nephews. And my nephew, he's like 9 years old, and he wasn't on Twitch, but he was on YouTube, and he was just watching somebody playing a video game on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I'm looking how many subscribers the YouTube channel had, and it was like 500,000. I'm like, holy cow! And this guy just makes a living just playing YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I told my mom I wanted to play video games for a living, 20 years ago, she would have been like, get the heck out of my house, go find something else.
Yeah.
But that's amazing.
Yeah. And you know, it's like I use that as a prime example because like people are afraid of automation. They're like, well, what happens when automation gets rid of all the jobs? And it's like, well, one, automation has, appeared throughout history several times. I mean, you have the Industrial Revolution is like the obvious example. Well, what happened? Yes, certain industries suffered severe job losses, but it's not like those jobs were just gone forever. What happens when automation occurs is that the nature of work changes. So, if one job gets automated away, it'll just transfer or transform into something else, which is where like these Twitch streamers come from. Apparently watching people play video games is really fun. There's a huge market for it. It makes hundreds of millions, if not more, every year of just people that, you find a streamer that has a personality that you're like, this guy's cool. I feel like if I hung out with him, it would be fun. So you watch this dude play Donkey Kong Country or whatever the hell game he plays, Fortnite, whatever. And that dude makes a living. And it's like, people will be like, oh, well, he's just playing video games. And it's like, streaming is not that easy. I mean, you have to be entertaining. You have to be there, set a schedule, because your fans expect you to be there at a certain time. It really is a job once you reach that point. So yeah, like the whole automation thing, there's like fear of automation, but ultimately the bottom line is that what happens is the nature of work changes, and those jobs just reappear somewhere else.
Sure. And why don't you take a minute to tell us exactly how Twitch works? I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm familiar with the name Twitch. I've never been there. I'm not a gamer myself. But do you get paid based on advertisements, or is this subscription based, or how does that kind of thing work?
Yeah, so Twitch has basically two statuses. They have affiliate and partner. Okay. To become affiliated, you just need to have like 50 followers, which is kind of like subscribers on YouTube. Mm-hmm. They see when you go live, they can, watch your VODs and all that kind of stuff. So you get 50 followers, you have to stream for a certain amount of time within a 30-day period and a certain number of times within a 30-day period with a certain number of viewers. Once you reach affiliate status, that's when people can subscribe to you. Excuse me. They can give you bits, which are kind of like super chats almost for a YouTube comparison.
Sure.
And that's how you get paid as affiliate. Partner is once you have kicked a certain amount of ass as affiliate, that's when Twitch is like, okay, well, we are going to make sure that you continue to experience growth because you have reached a threshold where you're worth developing. And once you reach partner, you get access to more emotes, which are like little emojis that people can use in chat that are unique to your channel. You usually get a flat rate. Sometimes you can get sponsorships. One of my favorite streamers is sponsored by Red Bull. And I mean, the dude makes a clean living just from playing Mario on Twitch. So.
Well, like you mentioned, you're more now in the entertainment industry than anything else. I mean, you're not really getting paid to play video games, but you're paid to construct a narrative while you're playing and to entertain people. And I think that's where people disconnect the idea of, I'm not just playing video games to make a living, but I'm, like you said, with streaming, you have to be entertaining. You have to provide a value that people want. Because I remember when when Super Nintendo first came out, I had one of those games, and I would sit after school and we'd play Super Nintendo, and sometimes my friends were just like really good at the game and I wasn't, but I'd sit there and watch them and I'm like, this is boring as hell. But that was before anyone thought about, okay, I'm going to talk into a microphone. So you got to be able to be interesting. And again, that takes another skill development right there to understand that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, it's basically public speaking. You're not directly in front of these people, but you still have to, when you're starting off, you're talking to no one. There's no one in your chat. There's no one watching you. When you're brand new, you're basically just entertaining the void. But that's also why a lot of people fail, is because they think like, oh, well, I'm really good at this game, so I can just play it and, the viewers will just pour in. And it's like, no, you have to be good at the game and be entertaining in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's lots of other jobs you can do on the internet. And that, since we're talking about entrepreneurship here, I wanted to talk about some of the other work you've done. I noticed on your website, you have some merchandise that you sell. Is that stuff that you've created with your graphic design, or?
Yeah, it was mostly just from random memes I was making. Like I would get an idea for a meme in my head, and then I'd be like, "Damn, that would be really good on a shirt or something." So I started putting some designs together to go onto shirts.
Okay, could you leave any advice for the listeners about how you might get started in doing something like that?
Absolutely. I've mentioned it a few times already. Everyone's good at something. Figure out what you're good at, and be honest with yourself about it. Like I'm very guilty of being super self-deprecating. I completely it's just 31 years of living in New Jersey. You'll do that to you. I completely undervalue my skills, or at least I used to. As of lately, I have thrown that out, and I've leaned into the fact and accepted that I am good at a lot of things. And instead of, kind of whining about like, well, I wish I could do this and that, I just went and did it. I just did it. Last year I got a really great idea for a book, and I was like, someone should turn that into a book. And then a few months went by, and I was like, okay, well, that someone is me. No one's going to do it for me. So I wrote a book, and I published it on my birthday in May of 2020. And same thing with this business with my wife. We were talking about it for a while, and eventually I was like, well, let's stop talking about it, and let's go see the tax guy, get the paperwork all filled out, and let's incorporate. Let's do it. And we just went and did it. So that's really my biggest piece of advice, is stop talking about it and do it. And I know that sounds like cliche and almost like one of those like MLM workshops, but truthfully, I mean, I know firsthand self-motivating can be really hard, but I mean, it literally pays off. I mean, I've had probably 8 graphic design jobs in just the past 2 weeks, yours included. I just did a book cover for somebody last week. So, I mean, and it's just, I just had to do it. You're not going to find a customer if you don't reach out and try and get one. If you don't demonstrate your skills, if you don't put them to work. So, yeah.
Well, I like how you made a reference to MLM. I'm a product of MLM. There's nothing wrong with that type of business model. But the secret is if you're not the one who can self-motivate, then you need to point them to somebody who can be self-motivating. And so I'm hoping that somebody will listen to this podcast at some time and be like, hey, if these two jokers can actually make a living doing whatever they want to do. Not that you're a joker, Ryan. I'm just, what I'm saying.
Oh, no, I'm absolutely a joker.
If these two people can make a living just messing around, then why can't I? And I think that's a very important lesson, because, as Nike says, just do it. How many people want to sit around and wait for the stimulus check to come to them, because it may or may not come.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think some people sadly are kind of banking on that. They're like, oh, I'll just wait for the other stimulus check. But for those of you out there that don't want to live like that, you have the means to do it. I mean, the total cost for us to start our business, like paperwork, filing, and all that, not counting equipment and stuff, but like to just start was about $600 to have someone just like properly file the paperwork and all that. For some of you, that may be a lot of money, but you can save that amount, and you can do it. And if you need graphic design work, if you need business cards or whatever, come to me. Tell me your situation. You know, I don't have a fixed price. I kind of just work within people's budgets. And marketing is the way to do it. If you have a really nice business card or website or whatever, I do that as well. You know, that sets the stage for your outward appearance to potential customers. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to go pay someone $2,000 to do like a website and a logo. I can do that for significantly cheaper. And my whole goal is to help small businesses. Our business is called Autonomy Virtual. And and that name is not just because we want to be autonomous, but our corporate goal is to help other people become autonomous. Instead of, 6 or 7 large companies that kind of provide all of the services, we would much rather see people taking their skills and serving their community. We want, 1 million people doing the same thing across the country, but serving their community, so that they're building their own wealth within their own community. They're helping their neighbors. And then, like you said, you start with the individual. Once you start taking care of yourself, like Jordan B. Peterson says, once you clean up your room, you get your act together, you can start helping others. And that's kind of baked into our entire corporate goal.
Now, if somebody wanted to start this life, do you have any resources that you use on a regular basis to learn some of the skills? I mean, I know that there's things like Skillshare out there. And of course, you can learn how to do that, or you could just hire people and become a freelancer. What are some resources you use?
So there's paid resources. I think Skillshare is a subscription model, but there's tons of free stuff. You have Khan Academy, which is you can go there to learn some basic stuff, and then you have Coursera, which you can learn like Java programming. You can learn music production. You can learn graphic design in, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, etc., for free. Coursera is free. They have paid courses, but almost every category has one, if not several, free courses you can take to learn a skill.
Okay, perfect. So again, for the audience listening, get off your butt, get out there and find some resources. They're all over the internet. Stop complaining about you not having liberty and go take your own liberty. Go build yourself a life. That's probably the best advice that I could leave with this topic, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about liberty as like individual rights, but it's also individual responsibility. You have to be responsible for your own well-being. And, that may include, earning your own living, finding a way to make extra money. If you're really tight right now, but you're really good at something else, find a way to do that something else to supplement your day-to-day. And then eventually that thing may grow into your day-to-day, and then it's your own. But you're never going to find out if you don't do it.
That's great advice. Now, I was going to pitch an idea to you, and maybe we'll do it here on the podcast, because I was very pleased with the graphic art that you have. My new logo it looks sharp, and I have a life of experience in the financial services world. I've done some heating and air conditioning. I'm learning how to do podcasts. I've got 70 episodes now published, and I don't have time to actually develop a website of my own. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you if you do that.
Yeah, I mean, Squarespace makes it super easy. And,
Okay.
And again, with my graphic design skills, I can make all the pictures fit and work on a Squarespace template. They have all kinds of basically drag and drop for like contact forms. You can do an RSS feed for your podcast. It's too easy. Domain names are like $10 a year, and then Squarespace hosting for the base package I think is $16 a month. So yeah,
All right. Well,
I'd be happy to.
I'll talk to you more offline about that, but it's been an idea I've had in my head for the last about a year and a half. I run 2 businesses of my own, but I have not integrated them with the podcast or anything like that. So that's what I'm looking to do. And so this has been a big commercial for you, Ryan.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It almost feels forced, but no, we were kind of just BSing. But I really appreciate you having me on here.
But is there anything else that you'd like to leave for the audience? I mean, any thoughts about the state of the world? Obviously, you're trying to take the control of your life in your own hands. Any other advice that we can leave to people?
Yeah, just do your best to not take the black pill. If you're familiar with the black pill, white pill concept, black pill is kind of the pessimist, white pill is the optimist, and not necessarily pessimist and optimist directly, but it's the easiest comparison between the two. It's very easy to get blackpilled. You turn on the news, you go on Facebook, and you just see all this propaganda and this nonsense, and it's easy to feel hopeless. But despite that, despite this nightmarish world I'm in, I've been doing a ton of side work, started a business with very little startup money. So do what you can to kind of stay positive. And the best way to do that, and again, it sounds cheesy and cliche, but is to actually do the thing. For months I was miserable at my old job. And then one day I found another job that paid significantly more. And then like a week later, I had filed the papers to start my own business. And those 2 actions alone have completely lifted me out of whatever funk I was in. So again, it's hard to self-motivate, but if you have a really good idea, by all means, do something with it. And if you need help, reach out to me. I'm on, Twitter, Facebook. I'm almost banned all the time, so probably not the best place to find me. I have a contact form on my website, which is just ryanbunting.com. Even if you're not contacting me for graphic design work, if you just have questions or if you're looking for resources, by all means, get in touch. I would love to see more people just take their own livelihood into their own hands, because if this last year has shown anyone anything, is that the government does not give a single shit about your livelihood, and the only person who does is you, and the only person who's going to do anything about it is you.
Right. I have this conversation with people all the time that seem to have swallowed the black pill. And I'm like, well, you only have 2 choices. You can either die, which is usually not the answer that they're looking for, or you can suffer through it and, continue to survive. So if that's what your choice is, then you might as well figure out how to survive. And we've just talked about a bunch of things to do that. And that's really why I call my show The Invictus Mind. I talk to people with lots of experience and people who are just getting started and everything in between. I usually ask this question, Ryan, and maybe if you saw my prep sheet, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But are you Invictus?
I believe so. I wasn't before, because I was still held back by, and I mean, it's all mental block stuff, but I was held back by, public education will do that to you. And just a lot of years working within the system can make you think that this is kind of like the only avenue to take. But the best way to be unconquered is to just do what you want to do. Work outside the system if you have to, Hey, if you offer a great service and you accept cryptocurrency, I will help you avoid the tax man, whatever it may be, But yeah, I would say I am, and I would like to see other people reach that same point.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. Stick on the line. I'll chat with you for a minute, but I want to say thanks for the conversation, and hopefully this provides some value to people.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope it does too.